Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a great weekend. I know I did. I spent most of my time kind of chasing two of my littlest grandkids around the house, their cousins. And one of them is 3 and the other one's about 2.5. And they kept this old man hopping quite a bit. But we got a great show for you today. First of all, I got to ask this question. Did you drink a Lysol toast over the weekend? Did you shine light up your behind or do a Clorox chewable? Did you take that Lysol, liquid Lysol, and just toast it? We're going to talk about all the craziness coming out of President Trump's Thursday press conference, and especially how the media handle it. And then, of course, Biden was heard from over the weekend. He did an interview with Politico, and he came out and he's mad as hell, not going to take it anymore. And there's not enough money. There's never enough money. And the little old $2 trillion stimulus package is just a drop in the bucket, according to Joe Biden. So we'll talk about that. And then New York City. A lot of people may not be aware of this, but before the coronavirus actually hit and got New York City in the grip, really the epicenter of the virus in the United States, people were beginning their exodus from New York. People were already leaving New York. Now they're leaving and they don't even know where they're going. And we'll talk about that and what it means, unfortunately, for the future of New York City. But we start out with a New York Times article. Trump's disinfectant remark raises a question about the very stable genius. So as you can imagine, coming from the New York Times, and that comment, the very stable genius, that's a mockery of the president, of course, that this is not going to be a very good story, at least from the New York Times perspective. And I'm not necessarily going to defend the president on some of this stuff, but I am going to put it in a little bit of perspective. And right off the bat, let me tell you, if you ever doubted the depth, the breadth, the hatred, the depth and breadth of Trump derangement syndrome, what we call here TDS, you don't have to doubt it anymore. It is off the chain. The president said some remarks, and we'll get into them in just a minute, talking about the possibility of disinfecting your body the same way that Lysol disinfects surfaces and that type of thing. And he talked about light being used, ultraviolet light being used to disinfect things, and could that actually be used on human beings both outside and potentially inside, which is actually a real experiment, by the way, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. But of course, the media just went crazy with this. Essentially, they think this is the comment that's going to turn the tides on the president, because he was, in their opinion, he was literally telling people, hey, over the weekend, chug a lug, a little Lysol, and shine a light up your behind, and you'll be all right. And if you believe that, then maybe the coronavirus is the least of your problems. But we'll get into that. So this is kind of an opinion piece from the New York Times. President Trump's self-assessment has been consistent. He said, this is, they're quoting President here. I'm like a very smart person, he assured voters in 2016. And he ran a hell of a lot better campaign than old Hillary Clinton. And did you see there was some polling? This just shows you how these headlines are. Polling that came out this past week. Biden ahead of Trump in critical battleground states. And, the big headline. But if you actually read into the article, that Biden is ahead, but he's less ahead than Hillary was at the same time in the same states. So Hillary's numbers were like twice or more, maybe 3 times better than Biden's, and we know what happened. But the headline was Biden ahead in battleground states. So you got to take all of this with a little bit of grain of salt. It says here, Mr. Trump's performance Thursday, which was when he had that press conference they're talking about, when he suggested that injections of disinfectants into the human body could help combat the coronavirus, did not sound like the work of a doctor, a genius, or a person with good you know what. I guess they're referring to common sense. Now, there's one really just small problem with their take on this. The president really didn't say it that way. He came out and said he was being sarcastic. I think it was somewhat of a weak defense. I didn't think he needed to make that defense, quite frankly. But if you go back and actually listen to what the president said, and the only problem I had actually was his kind of apology. It wasn't really an apology, if you will, explaining sarcasm, because based on what he actually said, it's much to do about nothing. He was talking about how you could use like disinfectants will take the virus off of surfaces in a matter of minutes. It kills the virus. And he mentioned like Lysol. What he was implying, if you actually listen to it, sarcasm or not, was that is it possible not to inject Lysol into your body, not to drink Clorox, but was it possible that the same concept of disinfecting something could be used in some type of way in the human body? And there actually are experiments with this, not with injecting Lysol, just to understand. Some of you out there, of course, if you're sucking on Tide Pods, I don't know if Lysol is a big problem for you. And then the other thing about ultraviolet light, which they don't mention much in this article, but he got ridiculed as well. The Lysol thing had the best staying power, so they kind of went with that. But they also were mocking him about what he said about ultraviolet light. Now, ultraviolet light, we know, is being used on mass transit things like buses. They literally pull buses into an ultraviolet light, put it in there, and it kills the virus. And there are ways to actually take the light and put it inside your body, believe it or not. The effects of it, there are. And of course, even doctors are saying that getting out in the sunshine and fresh air, which is the ultimate light, actually reduces your chances of contracting the virus and minimizes the effects of it. So there's a lot of science actually behind that. Did the president say it in the most artful manner? Probably not. Probably not. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But back to this article. Even by the turbulent standards of this president, his musing on virus remedies have landed with uncommon force. And that's what they like. They like that this is a catchy thing to say Trump said you should drink Lysol, that kind of thing, or shoot up Lysol. It's catchy. It got people's attention, and so they love it. Drawing widespread condemnation as dangerous to the health of Americans and inspiring a near universal alarm that many of his past remarks, whether offensive or fear-mongering or simply untrue, did not. So the press, man, when they saw that this was having a little bit of traction over the weekend, they just went in for the kill. I mean, you talk about piling on. They continue to just pile on. They hate this guy. They hate President Trump, and they saw an opportunity, or they see an opportunity, and even this morning they were still doing it. And as long as people are reacting to it, they will keep doing it. The reaction has so rattled the president's allies and advisors that he was compelled over the weekend to remove himself from the pandemic briefings entirely, at least temporarily accepting two fates. He loathes giving into advice from Republicans who said his appearance do more harm than good, and his political standing, and surrendering the mass viewership he wishes. Now, let's get into these Republicans for just a minute. And there were a few that came out. Most of them are anonymous in this article, but there were a handful that came out. Most of them never Trumpers. I'm not even going to give them a whole lot of credit. But let me just ask you this question. These people that are, quote, Republicans, and they're out there, that are condemning the president over this and just piling on. It's one thing to say that, perhaps the president should be more careful with his words, at the podium up there with the nation when he's acting as president. Perhaps he should be a little more careful. And I'm down with that. I'm actually in agreement to a certain extent with that. But these Republicans that they're quoting in here, and you can read the article yourself, but they're never Trumpers. And they never were going to vote. They never voted for the president. They didn't support the president at the time. And they didn't think that Donald J. Trump would win in 2016. They were shocked that he won, and they've been trying to hurt him ever since. So I'm not too keen on about these Republicans in general. And they talk about surrendering the mass viewership he relishes. There's no question about that. Donald Trump enjoys attention. He's part P.T. Barnum. I've had people actually speak critical. He's like P.T. Barnum. I actually think that's a positive because I'm a great admirer of P.T. Barnum. And there is a bit of showmanship in President Trump, and I actually like it. Are there times when he potentially takes it too far? Are there times when he is not the most artful at doing it? Yeah, but when you look at the overall results that the man Donald Trump has accomplished in both his life, in entertainment, and now as president, it's hard to argue that he doesn't have, in a very positive sense, some P.T. Barnum and showmanship in him. It is a big show, after all. I mean, it is not a monotone up there. Who would listen to anybody? I mean, if you just wanted experts' advice, and there's plenty of YouTube videos and things like that. By the way, you can check out our show on YouTube now. Go just spell out John Martin Talks on YouTube all the way. Good way to watch it. We got a growing number of subscribers. I appreciate that. We need to get our views up, so check us out on YouTube, and I'll tell you about some other ways to look at us as well. But they are attacking Donald Trump at every corner. Dr. Deborah Bricks, the coronavirus response coordinator, told CNN on Sunday, she said, "It bothers me that this is still in the news cycle about drinking Lysol and shooting up light beams up your behind. I worry that we don't get the information to the American people that they need when we continue to bring up something that was from Thursday night." And she's absolutely right about that, but she's being a bit naive. What the dear doctor fails to realize is that the press corps, and not everybody, but the general press corps, the mainstream media, they have little, if any, desire to actually spread accurate information. That is not what they see as their job. Their main job for the last basically 4 years, ever since Trump became really a serious candidate, is to destroy Donald Trump, to prevent him from getting the nomination. They weren't able to do that. Prevent him from winning the election. They weren't able to do that. And then prevent him from actually being president of the United States. And they have had some success in that. Now, they hadn't been able to get him impeached or removed from office. But think about this. They have hampered his presidency. What's really a miracle is how well the president has done in spite of all the forces working against him. But the press has impacted President Trump's ability to actually be all he can be, really, as president. There's no doubt about it. So the press has zero desire, really, for information. Their TDS, their Trump derangement syndrome, is real, and that is the main focus of the press. Take that to the bank, ladies and gentlemen. For weeks, the president's political team has been strikingly explicit about its intended messages against Mr. Biden. Now, Joe Biden, the guy running for the Democratic side, presenting him as a doddering 77-year-old not up to the rigors of the office, and setting off on a kind of whisper campaign that does not bother with whispers. In other words, a whisper campaign that they're shouting from the rooftops. And they're saying that, let me get this straight again. So they're saying here that President Trump's team is attempting to portray Biden as a doddering 77-year-old not up to the rigors of the office. Well, I hate to break it to you, press out there, but Biden is presenting that all on his own quite well. It doesn't take, basically, I mean, I wish I could get paid for producing Trump's commercials, because all you really got to do is play Biden video. They pretty much speak for themselves, man. You don't have to do much production. Just edit it out a little bit and show what he's actually saying. Just put him up there live. That's about as good a commercial. Today, I tell you what, I just thought about this. One of the ways President Trump could probably help his campaign the best is to pay for Biden to have airtime to just speak his mind. Well, today we're going to do it. We're going to help Joe Biden tell you what he really feels. We're going to pay for his airtime. That would probably be the most effective campaign they could come up with. But Biden, man, we're still, this is like the meme says, there you are looking for Biden to make a coherent sentence. When was the last time that Joe Biden was able to say a whole paragraph without, like, hey, that's not my wife, sister. Oh, my wife, that's my sister. I mean, what more do you need to know? On Sunday, the Trump campaign made clear that the disinfectant affair would not disrupt his plans. So the fact that some of y'all out there are dumb enough to try Lysol, I mean, keep in mind that one dude out in, where was it, Arizona, actually drank some kind of cleaner for an aquarium because it had one element of in its compounds that has been known to potentially help with coronavirus. So he drinks stuff. I mean, if you're going to do that, I'm sorry. I don't want anybody to get hurt. But if you're dumb enough to actually take Lysol and huff it, and people actually do that kind of stuff long before coronavirus. People huff paint. I used to work at a drug treatment center, and the stuff people will take on purpose is pretty scary. So they're out there. They don't need much encouragement. But if you did a Lysol toast over the weekend, I'm not so sure that you don't get what you deserve, but maybe that's cold-hearted. I don't know. On Sunday, the Trump campaign made clear that the disinfectant affair would not disrupt its plans. Joe Biden is often lost, said Tim Martell, a Trump campaign spokesman. No doubt about that. Talking about Biden, losing his train of thought during friendly interviews, even when he relies on written notes in front of him. No doubt. TJ Duckalo, a Biden spokesman, called this approach a distraction tactic. Biden's campaign is a distraction tactic, seems to be like. As if anything could erase the memory of the president, talking about President Trump, suggesting people drink disinfectant on national TV. Well, there's one little problem with all this. And let me just tell you, I'm not opposed to negative campaigning. Negative campaigning actually works. There's a reason why people do it, because it actually works. And everything's fair in a campaign. There's really no question about that. But the problem, and if you're new to the show, you may not, first of all, where you been? Secondly, howdy, how you doing? Glad to have you. But the problem is this double standard concept. And I've been saying on the show, but if I say it, it bears repeating. There is no double standard. I mean, people say, what do you mean? Yeah, sure, there's a double standard. No, there's not a double standard. There's only one standard, and that's a standard that conservatives, Trump's held to, I'm held to. Heck, if you're wondering why you didn't see our Friday show at our normal time, it's because I was in Facebook jail and we couldn't post anything live or otherwise on Facebook. And the reason I was in Facebook jail, I'm not even going to show you the post. First of all, let me apologize to my buddy Algorithm. Algorithm is tough out there. He's very sensitive. But we posted something on one of our Facebook sites about a month and a half ago, and they just now put us in Facebook jail about it. And basically, it said something to the effect of one way to get rid of the coronavirus would be to tell them that President Trump is going to remain president until we get till we stop the virus. And it said the Democrats would stop it immediately if that were true. And they came out and said that was voter suppression. That's why I got in Facebook jail. That I was actually attempting to suppress the vote, saying that President Trump, if he announced he was going to be president until the virus ended, the Democrats would find a cure, basically. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, if your vote is suppressed by that, then you got something to be depressed about. I don't know about, and you're probably on the Lysol binge this weekend. It's just crazy. So there is no double standard. There's only a single standard. If there was in fact a standard that was equal for both parties, both groups, then Biden's campaign would have been over before it really got it started based on this video right here alone. Play it.
I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
I mean, has Biden ever gotten a tough question on that at all? I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Democrats say they were pushing for a trial, but they really didn't want witnesses in the Senate any more than the Republicans did, because they didn't want Biden to be questioned on all this stuff. I mean, that video alone should have disqualified Joe Biden from being president. And we'll talk some more about some videos that are out there in as this article unfolds. But Biden, man, he's never gotten a tough question one time. Will he get one in a debate? We'll wait and see, but I wouldn't count on it. I'm sure the president will give him some tough stuff. This history, of course, back to the article, is the argument for Democratic caution. The list of episodes that were supposed to end Mr. Trump, and they list just a few, the Access Hollywood tape, where he talked about grabbing such and such. We'll talk about it in a minute. The very fine people on both sides of the white supremacist rally insulting John McCain's service as prisoner of war is longer than the most voters' memories. Now, let's break this paragraph down, because these are big accusations, things they say Trump did that didn't really stick to him. Access Hollywood tape. Now, I'm not particularly liking that tape as well. I think that President Trump, then candidate Trump, actually said some pretty offensive things on there. But here's the situation. President Trump, love him, hate him, or whatever, go back and listen to those tapes if you want to. And the president said what he could do. He didn't say what he did or what he will do. He said what he could do. And he was probably absolutely right. Are they offensive? No doubt about it. And is it a reason potentially not to vote for the president back in those days? Yeah, I mean, if you've already voted for him, we're past all that now. But was it part of a moral assessment of the man? I have no issue with that. If you wanted to say, look, I don't agree with his morals, I'm just not doing it. I could accept that. I may or may not agree with you, but I could accept that. But he said what he could do as a wealthy entertainer, celebrity, all that kind of stuff. And everybody knows what happens in Hollywood, let alone down in Fort Lauderdale or Palm Beach or wherever he's at now. But here's the thing. Joe Biden now, we talked about this last week. The best way, by the way, to watch our podcast, YouTube is one of them. Go to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, share it with others. You can also go to America's Voice News. They're now archiving our show. We're now download the free app for America's Voice News with your iPhone, Android. We're on Pluto TV, Fire Stick, Roku, Amazon, and we're on Dish Network, channel 219. So check all of that out. But back to Joe Biden. We talked about this last week. This lady, I believe her name is Tara Reid. Now, she's not the actress Tara Reid. She was a staffer for Joe Biden back in the 90s. And she accused Joe of assaulting her, sexually assaulting her. And now, and of course, Joe has adamantly denied this. There was not a single question about this during the 2020 debate. Not one question. And of course, we're supposed to women, the Me Too movement, and there are some people, give them credit for it, pushing back within that movement. And there was a big trend over the weekend on Twitter talking about Joe should resign, and it's being pushed by progressives, not conservatives. But there's actually, and I'm going to look into it, but I was listening to it on a program I listened to on the way in. There's actually a video now of all places from CNN, although they're not the ones posting it, going back to 1993, when on Larry King, he had a Senate panel out there, a couple of senators up there, and a woman called in 1993, which is when this incident happened, and talked about how her daughter had been essentially assaulted by a senator. She did not mention the senator's name, but she said that her daughter was afraid to go to the press because out of respect for the senator, and that she wouldn't be taken seriously, basically. You can check this out. I heard it. I haven't seen it. I heard it on the radio this morning. It is credible, and it turns out that this woman that called in 1993 was Tara Reid, the aide of Joe Biden's mother, called in. This thing is, believe me, all of you out there that are like all sold on Joe Biden, this is going to get real here. You're not going to be able to hide this. But this Access Hollywood tape is nothing compared to what Joe Biden has been accused of doing, actually sexually assaulting. There's a big difference. And this white supremacist rally deal, good on both sides. I am so sick of hearing that because it is a lie. It is not only is it out of context, it's just a flat out lie. And the media knows this. This is what really pisses me off. The media knows it's a lie. Joe Biden literally launched his campaign with a video when they didn't even want him to go to Charlottesville. He wanted to go to Charlottesville and do it with this lie about Donald Trump. So Joe Biden's campaign started with a lie, and that lie is that President Trump said there were good people on both sides, referring to the Nazis and Antifa. And that is not what he said. He absolutely said that there were good people on both sides of the statue removal issue, not the Nazis. And in fact, in like 45 seconds, I think, after he said good people on both sides, he specifically attacked the Nazis and said there was no room for white supremacists and Nazis right after that. So Trump not only did not say there were good people in white supremacist movement, but he attacked them in the same statement, which never gets played. And the whole thing with John McCain, Trump, you could dislike what he said about John McCain, but John McCain punched first. He was beating down on Trump while he was running. And President Trump is a counterpuncher, a classic New York kind of street-wise tough guy. If you try to hit them once, they're going to hit you twice and twice as hard. And that's what Donald Trump did. You may not like it. You may not agree with what he said, but he did it because John McCain fired the first shot. And Trump is never, and maybe he should, but he's never just going to turn the other cheek and let you slap him on the other side. He's not. And so he's going to counterpunch. That's just who he is. Those of us who supported him then and now already knew that. Lily Adams, a former aide on the presidential campaigns of Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, who is now advising Unite the Country, a pro-Biden super PAC. So this gal, she worked for Hillary Clinton. What happened? Hillary lost. She worked for Kamala Harris. What happened? He didn't even get to the voting, let alone. You can't say Kamala Harris actually lost because no one even had a chance to vote for her. She got out so quick. But now she's helping Biden, man. So I hope that she has the same level of success. I wish her the same level. But she said that swing voters in focus groups were especially dismayed at Mr. Trump's refusal to listen to experts. Really? Really? He's listening to experts. He's just not listening to losers like you, man. But she said any person who has ever done a load of laundry or installed a childproof lock on a cleaning supplies cabinet or just looked at one of those skulls on the label knows it's an idiotic idea. And she's right. It is true. It is true. If true, so what are they worried about? Like the Democrats say, if true, well, what are they so worried about? Are they worried about a bunch of Americans, huffing and spraying and injecting Lysol and Clorox and shining flashlights up their butt? They probably are, because a lot of their voters, keep in mind, are doing stuff like the Tide Pod Challenge, cheers. So I guess that would be a good way to do it, right? You could take a glass of Lysol and a Tide Pod, eat the Tide Pod, and then go cheers, and drink the bleach or the Lysol. Be a good way to do it. But should the president be more careful with his words? Probably. Probably when he's up there. There's no doubt about it. And keep in mind, though, there's a reason why we have warning labels. You ever read some of these warning labels like, preparation H is not to be used at toothpaste? That's because people use it for toothpaste. I remember a while back I was putting together a push lawnmower, right? And in the warning label, it had a picture of not picking up the lawnmower and cutting the hedge with it because it would like chop your fingers off. Do you know why they had to have that warning label? Because some idiot picked up the lawnmower and tried to cut the hedge with it and cut their fingers off. So yeah, is it possible that we had people taking, Lysol champagne? No doubt. But here's the thing, the press conferences. Should the president, because they talk about how, he cut back on him, he didn't do a Friday one. said he might not take any questions, or he didn't do, I guess he did a Friday one without questions. The president probably is a little too far out there as far as exposure. Maybe he should limit it somehow. I don't know. They're like 2 hours long. At least in his, there are other people talking instead of like Como for 2 hours in New York. But the press, absolutely, and the Democrats and the Never Trumpers, all mixed into one, they loathe President Trump. I mean, that's the best way. I looked up the word just to make sure that I was using it correctly. Loathe. Feel intense dislike or disgust for. That describes how the mainstream media, the Democratic leftists, which are controlling your Democratic Party, by the way, and of course Never Trumpers, which seem to be fading into the background a little bit right now, but they loathe this president. Trump derangement syndrome is real. It is absolutely real. Could it potentially cost lives because you think you should take a Tide Pod and, chase it down with some Lysol? Quite possibly. But give me a break, man. I mean, but maybe they need to put a warning label on President Trump's press conferences so that you could say, don't be an idiot. But then again, if you vote for Biden, you just about have to be, right? Let's talk about old Joe right now. This comes from Politico. Biden wants a new stimulus a hell of a lot bigger than $2 trillion. He did an in-depth interview with Politico. Joe Biden wants a more progressive approach, no joke, approach to economic stimulus legislation than Washington has taken so far, including much stricter oversight of Trump administration. What exactly does that mean? So the President Trump has been investigated since before he ever even took office. So now they want to investigate him some more. Think about what has Congress done in the last 4 years, basically, or certainly since 2018 when they won the majority in the House? Investigate Trump. That's all they've done. And so I guess that's their coronavirus response. Investigate Trump. But it says here, the Trump, much tougher conditions on, this is what Biden wants, on business bailouts, and that might be something worthy. Long-term investments, I love this part here, long-term investments in infrastructure and climate that have so far been largely absent from congressional debates. Long-term investments in climate. What exactly does that mean? It means the Green New Deal. That's what it means. And de Blasio talks about it. We're going to talk about New York here in just a minute if we have enough time. But it means the Green New Deal. Think about it. If right now, how in New York City, let's just say, if the Green New Deal had been implemented over the course of time, and we did away with the combustion engine, how New York would be starving right now. Do you really realize? There's some of you snowflakes out there that are all for this Green New Deal, and hey, I'm about as environmentalist as you'll find. I mean, I grew up in the country. Nothing pleases me more than to go fishing. You look at this up here. Some people call me the salty dog. I have worked on commercial boats, owned commercial boats. Now I work with a charter boat company that I'm hoping we're going to get to go this weekend. I might be socially distanced out because of all the craziness out there, but I'm all for protecting the environment. I am. But the reality is that we need the combustible engine for the foreseeable future. I'm not opposed to research and development alternatives. I'm 100% for alternative energy sources. But I don't want to create false economy. In other words, I don't want you to do like Solyndra with Obama. I don't have time to explain that right now, but check it out. That's the worst thing you could do. But if we had the Green New Deal right now, New York City would be in a famine. Because without trucks, because there's no electronic car that can, or truck for that matter, that can pull 85,000 pounds of goods and services up there, food, blankets, masks, gloves. And I say 85,000 because that's kind of the average of some of these semis actually tow. No electric engine that we know of can pull that load across a highway. It's not possible. So, long-term investments in climate, it sounds good, but it's gibberish, really, in reality. The former vice president said, the next round of corona stimulus needs to be a hell of a lot bigger. So he's cursing right now. Those are his words, not mine. Than last month's $2 trillion CARE Act. So it's got to be bigger than $2 trillion. Keep in mind that our entire budget is what, like $3 trillion? But it's got to be bigger than that. Act that it need, and that $2 trillion is on top of the budget, by the way. That needs to include massive aid. These are what Biden is saying. Massive aid to states and cities to prevent them from laying off a hell of a lot of teachers and cops and firefighters, and the administration is already wasting a hell of a lot of money. Well, so he's saying that Trump is already wasting money and that Trump hadn't bailed out the states. Well, Joe, I guess that's your job, right? Democrats are about bailing out the states. New York City and New York State was already going bankrupt before. They were already in deficit before this coronavirus because of all their rules, regulations, and taxes had run anybody that was trying to be an entrepreneur the heck out of there. Remember, Ocasio-Cortez came out. Can you imagine a congressperson actually coming out and saying, we don't need those 25,000 jobs in our district that are going to pay $15 to $20 or more an hour and have health care insurance benefit? We don't need no stinking jobs in our district. How can a person, this is what I want to ask you, if you're up there in whatever congressional district that old Ocasio-Cortez is in, how can a person go before the microphones and say when it comes to jobs, 25,000 jobs in that district, that she said, we don't need that. We don't want that. I mean, and get reelected. Of course, she hadn't been reelected yet. We'll see. Probably will. Because what did Nancy Pelosi say? A glass of water with a D behind it could get elected in that district. That doesn't say a whole lot for the smartness of it. But I don't know anybody should be able to get elected. So I don't want no jobs. No jobs. That's who the Democrats are electing. And Joe Biden is with Ocasio-Cortez. She's endorsed him, and he's accepted her endorsement, the no jobs endorsement. These are the people that if you don't vote for Trump, they're going to be in charge of revitalizing the economy. The people that stood up and said, we don't need no jobs. I mean, right almighty. And I heard Rashida Tlaib in a thing saying, if your state reopens, she's the gift that keeps on giving. She's part of the Twitter squad. I call them the Twitter twats myself. But she just said over the weekend in an interview that if you don't want to go to work, you shouldn't have to go to work. Shouldn't be forced. And nobody's forcing anybody to go to work. She's basically saying, no, stay at home and get paid. Biden has been running a low-profile campaign, no doubt, during the pandemic, tweeting, filming videos, and appearing on Sunday shows from his Delaware home while President Trump has briefed the nation daily from the White House. Biden has let House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader, let's hope he stays that way, and Leader Chuck Schumer speak for the Democratic Party during the debates over economic relief, offering supportive public statements that have faded into the background. So they say these statements and all this stuff from Biden have faded in the background. Well, guess what? That might be his best shot, is to fade back into the background and totally disappear. Because the more people see of Joe Biden, I don't see how that helps him. Biden was clearly disappointed that Pelosi and Schumer failed to secure any new aid to states in this week's $484 billion package. That package is to help small business, not huge states, Mr. Joe. But he suggested that could work out politically, because in the next round they'll be able to blame Trump and other Republicans for looming state budget cuts and layoffs of first responders. As I said, New York City and the state of New York, they were in deficit spending before the coronavirus ever hit. Biden said they got what they could get, talking about Schumer and Pelosi got in a bill. I love this statement. I've been in too many negotiations to second guess anybody else. Biden's been up there in Congress and being vice president for a combined 50 years. But now he can fix it. 50 years. Biden said that repealing the bulk of Trump's $2 trillion tax cut would help limit the red ink. It wasn't worth the power. it wasn't worth the powder it will take to blow it to hell. So he's saying he's going to blow up the tax code. Ultimately, investing in the future is the only thing that grows the economy back so the deficit doesn't eat you alive. Investing in the future. Let me tell you what that means. What the Democrats mean by investing in the future is ignore the spending now. We're investing in the future. Don't worry about paying the bills now. How would that work for you? Think about that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't plan for your future and everything else and invest in your future by like saving your money and putting in a retirement plan, something like that. But if you operated your household or your business that I'm just going to worry about the future, today's bills, not so much. That's what they're talking about here. Biden has loved talking about stimulus ever since he ran the Recovery Act. Of course, they're all about government. And he sounded comfortable returning to the topic from his Delaware home, although there were a couple of typical hard-to-follow tangents and one brief coughing interruption that he attributed to swallowing a peanut the wrong way. Well, that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is about as harsh as you can expect the media to criticize Biden. You know, pushing a aide up in the corner and, sticking his hand, what they say, she was penetrated, okay? Penetrating an aide, they're not going to ask you a question about that. Using billions of dollars in taxpayers' money to quid pro quo with the Ukraine over getting an investigation of his son squelched. They're not going to ask any questions about that. But, talking about swallowing a peanut the wrong way, oh, yeah, that's about as tough a question as Biden is going to get, man, right there. Biden clearly hopes to persuade some 2016 Trump voters to back him in November. He also needs to make sure that progressive Sanders and Warren supporters don't stay home. Well, the first question I would have there is why would any Trump voter swing to Joe Biden? You may not like something about it, but can you imagine very many Trump voters? If they're betting on Trump voters swinging to Biden, that's not the best bet. And if you're actually a person out there considering either swinging to Biden or voting for him, like they're talking about Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders supporters, I've been saying this, but if I say it, it bears repeating. If you are thinking about voting for Joe Biden, you should at least commit to watching this next video for a 24-hour continuous loop. If you have to tape your eyes open or get sleep deprivation, slap you upside the head, you should watch this video before you actually make your final decision in a 24-hour continuous loop. Check it out.
I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun, and the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap, and I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
So all of you roaches out there that are thinking about voting for Joe Biden, I don't know how I can understand. I don't agree with it, but I can understand being vehemently anti-Trump. I get it. I don't see how you could be for Joe Biden. How you could expect a guy that you wouldn't let drive your car. Would you loan your car to Joe Biden? If he were your friend, would you say, hey, yeah, Joe, take it to the supermarket, no problem. I mean, so you wouldn't even give the guy the keys to your car, but you're going to give him the keys to the White House? I don't know. All right, we're going to talk about this Wall Street Journal article with the time we have left, and it's about New York City and how they're losing population before the coronavirus, and it's only going to get worse. People were leaving New York City before the coronavirus. Now what? Ross Sapier's customers are clear when they call to hire a moving van. They are leaving New York City because of the coronavirus, and they aren't sure when or if they are returning. Now, Mr. Sapir, as president of Roadway Moving, said his storage business is booming as people with the motivation and means flee the, the epicenter, good cough, run, the epicenter from the pandemic, but I got toilet paper, the epidemic which killed nearly 11,000 in New York City as of Saturday. Hey, I can't blame people for wanting to get the heck out of there. If I was there, I'd be wanting to get out too for multiple reasons. Many clients are leaving, check this out, this is pretty desperate right here. Many clients are leaving before figuring out where they're going and what movers to go into now uninhabited apartments. Pack up everything and put in the storage. So they're leaving when they don't even know where they're going. I mean, I guess it's like the old saying, man, I don't know where we're going, but we're making good time. Going down the highway, making good time. New York City economy depends on people, millions of people wanting to live here, crammed together in small apartments, crowded sidewalks, and packed subway cars. Here's something that is going to be extremely interesting, difficult to resolve. How do you maintain, especially New York City, but any major metropolitan area, without public transportation? And how do you socially distance in a subway? I lived and worked in New York City in the mid-'80s for over 4 years. There is no way to socially distance during rush hour on a subway. It is not possible. If they tried to say it's just not possible. If you've ever been there once, trust me, it is not possible. How are they going to do that? You can't, in a bus the same way. No way to do it. But after decades of growth, the city's population has declined for the past 3 years, which the pandemic threatens to accelerate. An exodus could leave the city without a workforce it needs to attract businesses. Well, they don't need no jobs. Isn't that what Ocasio-Cortez said? We don't need no jobs. So it's been losing population for the last 3 years. You think there's any coincidence for the fact that de Blasio has now been in charge, Comrade de Blasio, since 2014? He's been in charge of New York City, and people were leaving before that. Do you think there's any connection there? Anyway, I hope and pray for the people of New York City. Let me just end with this. Here's the mantra, as I see it, of the Democrats in general. And this is Joe Biden for sure. I haven't fixed it. It's gotten worse since I've been here. And if you elect me, I can fix it now. That is the mantra of the Democratic Party. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, and share it with others. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. But above all else, like I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.